Well, here I am. Well, let's see. It's January 5, beginning of the new year, 2026. Our president just went down to South America. He's working up our 51st state, I think. So that's a good start to the year. I'm getting ready for the first of probably 4 regattas that I'll be attending this year. This first one, which is only 10 days away from now, will be in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. So I've been getting my models ready, getting the gear up to speed, and all that happy horse shit. You can see some of it here. I've got most of the models done and already crated, ready to go. So that's what that's all about. And you can see some of them on the table here. Now this is Jake's, Dave Jacob, his work there. These are my cylinders. This is Jake's. Look at him. What a show off, huh? You got a transmitter case. Well, whoopee fuck. Well, anyway, that's the way he wants to do it. It really is a smart move. It's so easy to damage your transmitters. Or worse yet, forget them while you pack everything up. You take everything to the lake or the regatta and you forget your gear. All right, well, anyway, this first video, which I'm preparing, is kind of the prototype of how I'm going to do these things. I'm going to, let's see, I got 6 models to prep and get ready for the event. So the first one that I'll be chronicling here, now there's a whole bunch of work that's already happened here, but basically what I'm doing is trimming the boats out. So the first one I'm going to do is this Moebius kit of the SEAVIEW. A lot of you will recognize this beast here, and you also might know that the Moebius model company produced 2 versions of the SEAVIEW, and this one represents, of course, the movie version with the 8 windows. Beautiful kits. Gary Kerr gets credit for doing all the research. He was leading me in on that kit. Anyway, I assembled this kit and converted it to radio control. To make it work, of course, you need the mechanisms, and you got to keep them dry because it's going to be underwater. And Ellie and I developed these watertight cylinders years ago, and we sold them commercially. I'm now retired, and what we'll be doing here is just buttoning this particular one up and then installing it into the SEAVIEW. So without further ado, for example, what I'm doing here is buttoning up the forward bulkhead. It's good practice. In fact, it's required. After the cylinder has been in the water, its job, of course, is to keep water out. But invariably, water gets in small quantities through seals and other entry points. So your post-mission checks, one of them is to make sure that you open up the bulkheads and let things air out overnight. So what I'm doing here is I'm slamming home the after bulkhead after making sure it's lined up. I should put an indexing mark on this thing. I'll do that just as soon as I push that bulkhead in. So the indexing mark, let's do that. Which is nothing more than a nasty old Sharpie. Here and there. There we go. See that? Now I can make sure that the bulkhead is lined up correctly. Orientation is radially correct with the cylinder proper. All right, now we're ready to make up the plumbing, which comprises these hoses. Part of the ballast system, I have an air pump on board which will take air either from the surface atmosphere through a snorkel, or it will scavenge the available air within the cylinder to start the surfacing operation if the snorkel is submerged. And these hoses route induction and discharge air from that little pump, which is right here. All right, so it's ready to go. So I'm going to do a function test real quick on the cylinder, and we're going to turn things on. Now, it uses a magnetic switch here. Another product from Nautilus Dry Docks. If you want to get into this game, contact Bob Martin, proprietor of Nautilus Dry Docks. He's got almost all the gear you need to get into RC submarining. Anyway, the startup protocol is the same as with any RC system. You turn the transmitter on, and then you turn on the system. In this case, I'm using a magnetic switch. And I'll shut up so you can hear things. Propulsion, 2 motors, 1 for each pump jet. And then the servos, rudder, sailplanes, and the stern planes. Now notice the stern planes respond to the angular displacement of the cylinder. If it pitches up or down, a corresponding motion of the servo will drive the stern planes to correct for that angular displacement. And I mentioned the ballast system. It's air pump. Listen. That will draw air through the induction over here, or will draw air from the cylinder itself if the induction snorkel valve is submerged, which will start the surfacing operation. The emptying of the ballast tank would be completed once the sail broaches the surface and has access to atmosphere. All right, so we're happy with that. We're going to go ahead and turn the system off and install it into the model itself. So we've turned off the cylinder, we've turned off the system, the subdriver, and now we're going to go ahead and outfit the hull with the cylinder, and then make up the appropriate linkages and drivetrain. Now you notice I'm using a Velcro strap here. That Velcro strap holds the cylinder in place. That's all I need to hold the cylinder. And all of the interface to the linkages with the cylinder and the hull occur at the stern. All right. So what I'm going to do is get the rudder and stern plane push rods out of the road. I've got the hull accessible now, and I take the cylinder and I gently push it into place, like so. See that? Down it goes. Now I do have an indexing pin which engages the cylinder and ensures that everything is in place. Good. So the cylinder is now indexed to the hull by that indexing pin in the bottom. I should have showed that to you. But regardless, we now have that task of lining up the drivetrain and then the linkages. So I'm going to get those push rods, stern plane, and as a matter of fact, the stern plane one comes out because it's magnetically coupled. See? I just take it, get out of the way. Now, the hard part is getting the pump jets. I got a pump jet in each nacelle here, and each one has a drive shaft, which is spring-loaded, which is a pretty clever trick. What you do is you bring it over here, and the coupler is kind of a dog bone affair, very much like the Dumas gear that a lot of us are familiar with. And all I have to do is rotate things until they line up. So I'm going to stop recording it. There, I finally wrestled the drivetrain elements together. You can't see it very well, but there's a pump jet in each nacelle, way back in there, back here. And you can see the shafts, at least one of them, which extends up into a Dumas type of coupler right here, pointing at it. And it works after I install the cylinder through a spring-loaded dog bone affair. You can barely see it in there. Anyway, that's how that works. And that's perhaps the most difficult makeup union when you install the cylinder within the hull proper. So what I'm going to do now is simply make up the rudder linkage to its magnetic coupler here. That drives the rudder to that horn. And of course the rudders here are all ganged together. Three of them. You got the skeg and you got the two rudders proper. And since they're directing flow from the discharge of the pump jets, you get considerable yaw forces when you're in a turn. So this model turns surprisingly well on the surface or submerged. Anyway, I'm going to pause briefly and get back to it. We're going to make up the stern planes. Again, it's a magnetic coupler to the stern plane here and here. Boom. See that? Yeah. All right, so we've got the cylinder installed in the hull. We've made up the running gear, the drivetrain, and we made up the two push rods, the rudder and stern planes. The push rod for the fairwater is activated by this element here, which is a magnet, which will couple with the fairwater push rod here. If I can lay this down, you can get a better view of things. Push rod here makes up to the push rod here, which in turn is coupled to the fairwaters, like so. Okay. We want those on the rise position, and before we make up the top of the hull, we have to first make up the induction line from the snorkel, which is housed within the sail. So, here we are, making up the hose, like so. All right, so with the hose in place, we take the antenna, which is from the receiver, the make sure we get a good signal. We just plop it in there, and then we make up our Velcro strap, which is rather redundant because it's such a snug fit, but form is everything. So we get that in there. Make sure we're not going to pinch anything when we put the upper hull on. So I get everything out of the road, and then all I have to do is slip on the bow. There's this capture piece right here, which will go under here, and then a single securing screw back here will go down to make up the fitting that'll hold this in place. So as you can see, I'm going to slide this thing in there, right there. Okay, I'll slide it forward, drop the superstructure down. That looks good. We got this lined up here. All we need is a Phillips screwdriver. And we secure this. And we've now made fast the superstructure, the top of the hull, to the rest of the model. I don't know where that crap came from. Now we're going to make sure that the magnet makes up. You see that? We're now magnetically coupled. That push rod I showed you in the superstructure is just clamped down to the magnet from the subdriver. So what we're going to do now is turn the system on here before we put it in the test tank. Incidentally, the objective today is to confirm a trim change I made last night. So we're going to see how that worked. So I'm going to turn on the transmitter, of course, and we turn on the submarine. Now with its subdriver in there, all I have to do is wave the magic wand, a magnet. I just heard a little click. So the system, the subdriver, is now on, and we'll affirm that by wagging the control surfaces. Rudders, stern planes, fair waters, and listen for the motor. Okay, that's working, and the pump for the ballast system. We're ready to plop this sucker in the water. Without further ado, so we wait for this thing to flood. Now the ballast tank is dry, and it's affording enough buoyancy now to hold the model in what's called surface trim. And this is the condition it would be on the surface while it's running. Now we're going to throw a little bit of throttle ahead and astern, so we know all that's working. And what I do now is I go to vent. Now vent on top of the ballast tank is open, releasing air. Water's rushing in through 3 openings in the bottom of the ballast tank. Now, we notice that we took a down angle. I may have too much foam from last night's operation. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. It looks pretty good. So I have the amount of foam correct, but the placement is a little bit too far here. I want the center of buoyancy, which is right now very closely coupled to center of gravity, but the foam, the buoyant element is a little bit after where it should be. That's why it's assumed static stability with a nose down condition. I want to put that center of buoyancy right over the center of gravity, and that's simply done by moving a little bit of foam forward. And it's done incrementally. This is pretty damn close. I can see it's not touching the bottom because it recovers nicely. All right, good. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm happy with that. And you notice that just as much of the sail sticks out. As Bob Martin advocates, or whatever that fucking word is, that a submerged model be trimmed slightly positive, so it will have a propensity to rise. And here, this is very good trim for a submarine, just a little bit of the sail sticking out. Now, the snorkel is submerged, so when I go to blow, it's going to have to scavenge air out of the cylinder itself. And then when that sail comes out of the water enough, it will expose the snorkel to atmosphere, and then it will switch from atmosphere and break the vacuum, the slight vacuum created when we started scavenging air. It will break that, get it back to 1 atmosphere, at the same time providing atmosphere air for the pump to complete the blow. So we start the blow. Listen for it. There. The float valve element dropped. It's now taking air from atmosphere. And you can see that the model continues to rise until the ballast tank is empty, and that'll be accompanied by a gurgling sound. There, you hear it? Whoops. I hit the throttle. Oh, good. It just jammed that in there. That was something I wanted to avoid. The light guard, which is just a friction fit, so I'll just push it back out where it belongs a little bit. All right, I also note that I have a very slight starboard list. So when I move that little bit of foam forward, I'll move a little bit more foam to the starboard side, so that'll correct. All right, so I'm very happy with that. I'll continue the blow because I was interrupted by that miscue. Hear that burbling? That's excess air coming out of the ballast tank through the openings in the bottom of the ballast tank, bubbling to the surface. So that's as empty as that ballast tank's going to get, and we are at designed waterline. Now, we know when we watch the movie and the TV shows, this thing sat ridiculously high. Well, that's an impossibility because I got the biggest ballast tank I could possibly put in there. And I'm able to get the upper set of windows above water and surface trim. Oh, that's fine. All right. So what I'll do is take this thing out of the water, remove the cylinder, perform my post missions on it, which is to let it air out, which should be in good shape. And I'll move the foam, and then one last trimming trial, and we'll be done. So there you have it. That's the SeaView. Excellent model kit produced by Moebius and modified by yours truly to be a rather credible RC submarine in its own right. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm going to turn this beast off. We're going to affirm it's off by operating the transmitter. Nothing's wiggling. Turn off the transmitter. Lift the superstructure off. Disconnect the induction hose. Put this guy away. Right over here. Like so. And we'll yank this guy out of here. And all we have to do is drop these two magnetic connectors for the rudder and the stern planes. Undo our strap. And then lift the front end here. Clear. Get my little pinkies in there. Lift from the front end. Get it this far. And then up she comes. And in my post-mission, first thing I do is look for water in the dry spaces. They're fine. Notice that I yanked out one of the dog bones. We'll just put that right back in there. Okay, I'll post-mission this thing later and get the water out. And I'll move some of this foam you see forward. And a little piece of this is going to go over here to get rid of that slight starboard roll we had. Now you see this thing here? That's removable for obvious reasons. I have 3 spares. Experience tells me that you're always going to suffer some damage, either in transit, during testing, or at the boating site. All right, that's the long and short. That's the SeaView. We still got a lot of other models to get ready. We got this Type 21 at 96 scale and this 196 scale albacore. They're painted. They had already been trimmed out in primer gray, but after painting, I want to trim again before they go in their boxes. So, well, that concludes this first installment, hopefully, of many video reports, which will chronicle the process of radio-controlled model submarining in the year 2026. So, there you have it.